Good evening, everybody. My name is Daniel Young. I'm the owner and founder of Adaptive Perspective and the Adaptive Perspective social media platforms, and I am back to talk about the stock market and closed-end funds and your overall strategy. So, getting the disclaimers out of the way, my cat is roaming, and who knows what you'll hear in the background as I film these in my house. This is an unedited video. I am not a financial advisor. I am a strategist. And I don't speak like the herd, meaning I don't speak like everybody else. I walk in limited company and sometimes I walk alone. Um, my ongoing plea the last couple of weeks, or maybe my ongoing request, has been to help me hack YouTube. If you comment on videos, like videos, and share videos, that tells the YouTube algorithm to push videos out further, but that also allows me to help other people. So the whole goal is, and it really is changing people's perspective, but also helping you beat the herd and helping you optimize your portfolio and do the best you can. So, looking back at the last week, are there important takeaways financially? Yes. And it's really all wrapped up in drama and politics. But we're essentially watching a battle for control, and it's all about perspective. So, let me give you mine and maybe help you adapt yours. Powell and the Fed have been in they've been controlling inflation and they've been controlling rates, and they care nothing for you and me. Now, that's not me being selfish or cynical or anything. That's just me calling it like it is. The Fed printed 40% of currency, really over 40% of currency in mere months. And I mean, I think my daughter was 11 at the time, and she understood supply and demand better than how Jerome Powell put it on live TV. Right? So the Fed printed a shitload of money, and by doing such, devalued currency. They created more of it, and it was automatically worth less. They caused inflation, and they've been self appointed to tame inflation. That's power. And if you think they're going to surrender it easy peasy, no chance in hell. So almost everybody in the finance game, besides the Fed, will tell you the Fed is behind the rate curve. They ratcheted rates super fast, and now they're going at snail's pace on the way back down. And that's not due to anything besides the Fed trying to maintain their control and maintain their stranglehold on the US economy. Because by doing such, they keep their power. But then Trump won the presidency. Had Trump lost, it'd be the man, it'd be ultimate rule in a no holds barred situation. It'd be the maniacal superpower in the wild, wild west, or in a self-created echo chamber. In other words, we would be fucked. Janet Yellen, who abdicated her throne as a Treasury Secretary, was borrowing more and more to pay the USAID bills, and then, well, really pay for everything. She was sandbagging the taxpayer intentionally, but she was sandbagging us and using the Treasury to pay for all the stuff that we couldn't afford. But she refused to refinance almost $9 trillion in debt when rates were sub 3%. I mean, that's an intentional sabotage. That's an intentional sabotage of the system. And that's a lady who doesn't give a fuck about you and me because she was hoping and also hoping that we would be able to pay for it all and also knowing that we couldn't pay for it all. She would have bankrupted the US, and a bankrupt US has no option than to turn to China, who would have then taken over the US. But then Trump won, and Yellen lost power to the point where she left the post early. Powell is holding on to his um, assumed role, appointed and also assumed role. Yellen saw the writing on the wall and left. And when Besant came in, he changed the game. So instead of taking on the Fed directly, the Fed exists separate and also part of the Treasury Department. But instead of Besant and Trump attacking the Federal Reserve directly and challenging Powell for the short-term yield rate. The short-term yield rate drives rates for everything: home mortgages, furniture loans, refinancing U.S. debt. Instead of attacking the short-term rate like everybody else had, they went for the 10-year rate, and they're going to attempt to lower that to indirectly place pressure on the Fed. But why would they do that? Well, if you can lower the 10-year rate, and I say fake a recession, Trump and Bessent or President Trump and Bessent have both said we might experience some type of recession, but it's almost like a perceived recession because you're going to let the media take the bait. But if you can cause what everybody thinks is a recession, then you can force the Fed to lower rates. But I say that, but it's almost like an if it comes to this. If it comes to that, you can force the Fed to lower rates. But I think they're going to do it a little bit differently. So the Fed's job is to control inflation, and their self-professed metric is to keep inflation at 2% or under. It's currently under 2%, but we still have high rates. So if you remember the blanket fort analogy I've been using, I mean, you're a blanket fort, you start at the couch, you've got kitchen chairs and like a mop handle and a broom handle. The Fed was quietly printing money, or quiet QE, quiet quantitative easing, and quietly pumping money into the market like that broom handle holding up the blanket fort. You had Congress spending money. You had Congress spending more than was budgeted. Why is that 2 trillion metric used by Trump and Elon important? That's the 2 million that, or the 2 trillion that we don't actually have in the budget. Congress was overspending the budget, which shouldn't have happened because supposedly the Congressional Budget Office controls all budgeting. The only way to spend more than what you have is to tax more than what you're saying you're going to tax. So you have the Fed quietly printing money, holding up the blanket fort of inflation and the economy. You also have Congress spending more than what was there, and you have USAID sending money everywhere but the USA. So in that, uh, we'll say in the blanket fort of the economy, and how inflation was used as part of the economy was they actually used inflation to somewhat prop up the economy. So Besant arrived, and we experienced the dawn of Doge at the same time, or close to it. So while Doge took center stage and exposed all the spending from USAID and everybody else, and then we had our new department heads cutting spending and exposing more spending, and honestly gaining new savings. Besant stops the Treasury from borrowing to pay for everything, and the Fed stops printing money. So the creation of more money devalues money. The ongoing spending of that created money devalues money. And then we get stuck in this sick cyclical charade, and all of it came to a grinding halt. So once the Fed was forced to stop printing money, and Congress got exposed, and USAID got shut down, and then currently I think they've cut 90% of USAID, inflation halved. 3 months into POTUS 47, and inflation continues to drop. And that's before Besant really pushes his agenda to circumvent the Fed. So what's the agenda? Tariffs. It's 3 parts, but it's really 4. But its main 3 components are tariffs. Tariffs, I mean, if you listen to the news, tariffs are evil. Well, if every other country uses tariffs and factors that into their budget and rates on tariffs, then why shouldn't the US? Tariffs on the US side of things bring people to the table. They allow the US to bring people to the table to negotiate a much better deal for the US. Sounds like a really good thing. And then let's see. So they bring people to the table. Tariffs are a good thing for the country overall. Tariff money also flows into the External Revenue Service, paying off our debt and offsetting taxes. Because between Trump and Bessent both, they continue to say the goal is to lower taxes for everyone making $200,000 or less. But it's really everybody. For more than 100 years, the U.S. budget has been sourced out of the taxpayer's back pocket. And they're trying to flip it to what it used to be. The bulk of our budget, really all the budget, coming off tariff money and not our money. But the problem with that is the Fed and everybody else likes control, right? The country digging itself out of debt and helping the citizenry offset cost frustrates the Fed. And it sounds like, I get it. It sounds crazy. It sounds like two different things. The Fed sets rates, the Fed looks at inflation, but when the Fed can't control and manipulate the situation, you take power away from the Fed. Fed doesn't like that. Federal Reserve, right? So without the Federal Reserve's manipulation, President Trump and company, including Bessent, halved inflation. The Federal Reserve didn't have inflation. That's their job. And they couldn't figure out how to do it, supposedly. Everybody else did it for them. So, I mean, it is the Fed loves power. Like, how else do you explain their attempted stranglehold on the economy? So, Bessent's plan. So, we have tariffs, we have deregulation, which lowers the cost of everything. We have more drilling, and that's oil, natural gas, and everything in between, right? But more oil because everything runs on oil. Computer chips are made from oil or oil and oil byproducts. There we go. So drilling and having more oil and having more U.S. oil and having an energy independent country decreased everybody's costs. All of those things bring down and help curtail inflation as well. And me personally, well, so before I get to that, so the three markers: tariffs, deregulation, and oil. The fourth one is, I think it's more perception of what reality is. That there, the perception is Doge will create a softer or a more flooded job market, like unemployment might increase. And when the Fed typically lowers rates, it's during a recession. So the economy slows, unemployment goes up, and when the economy and it's contingent. So the economy slows, unemployment goes up, and the Fed goes, "Oh, we need to cut rates to take pressure off, all that yada yada, but really encourage spending." That's the housing market. Current housing loan, like a current um, home loan right now, is at 6.8%. If the Fed cut rates, not that they're going to do it right off the bat, let's say the Fed comes in next month and goes, "We're going to cut rates by a solid percent," and you had the option of paying a 6.8% loan or a 5.8% loan, and it's been 6.8 for forever. It's fluctuated a little bit, but it hasn't dropped sub six in a while. That would spark a huge increase in refinance and in home loans. It encourages people to spend more. So a softer or a perceived softer job market helps almost push the Fed to cut rates, right? Because that's what they're supposed to do. That's what they're supposed to do. You have the economies, so tariffs are not inflationary. We have deregulatory efforts in place. Um, we have an economy that people think will slow down with all this tariff talk, and I don't think that's true. And then we have this perception of busier job market because of all the government jobs that we're losing. Which, if you think about that, if we're cutting that many government jobs, that's how big the government has gotten. But all of those things give people the idea that we're in a recession. And the perception of a recession is almost a greater event than having it because it forces everybody to talk about it and it forces the Fed to act. Now, I don't think the economy is going to slow. Macroeconomics or macroeconomists, there we go, are still split on a recession. And the only people who say we are for sure having a recession are the same people who are telling you that tariffs are inflationary when research has shown that they're not. So we can kind of throw that advice out the window. And at this point, I mean, if we're going to present the idea of a recession, if we have anything, it's the no landing recession in the sense that the perception that the economy is slowing for all this other stuff, or pick your reason, is going on, but really the economy continues to chug along. Plus the reality that inflation is dropping even lower than it is now. And so you have the perception of a slowing economy, you have the perception that the job market's bigger and unemployment has risen, and you have the reality that inflation is less than 2%, then the Fed should cut rates. It should force the Fed to cut rates. We, I, we, why the big push? Why does the Fed need to cut rates? The Fed needs to cut rates, one, for the economy, right? To really spur the economy and make it easier for people to do business and find a house and a lot of other things. But the Fed's not going to do it unless they're forced. And when they do actually cut rates, they'll be late to the party and it'll be on purpose. So remember, the Fed's purpose is to control inflation, supposedly. And if inflation has significantly dropped, well, then why are rates so high? It's because Powell is using what he says is the uncertainty of tariffs, which just mean that no president in living memory has actually implemented tariffs. A lot of people have talked about using tariffs. No one's actually done it. So no president in living memory has actually used tariffs to benefit the United States. A lot of presidents have bent over the United States and um, benefited other countries. That's probably the best way I can say that. All right. So Powell's using that media spin uncertainty of tariffs to justify the Fed's reluctance to cut rates. And he's great at doublespeak. I mean, Jerome Powell has a job for a reason. He is great at doublespeak. He caused inflation and then said he didn't know how it happened. He's been talking his way through congressional meetings because half our congressionals are worthless sacks of crap and mental midgets. And he can say whatever they want, whatever he wants, and they don't call him on it. But President Trump and Bessent don't follow the bullshit. They call out bullshit and then point it out. And when the Fed refuses to lower rates in the midst of all of this other stuff, I think this is my opinion. I haven't heard anybody else say this. They're going to force the Fed to drop rates. And with that rate drop, essentially force Powell out of his job. So we have Trump and Bessent both negotiating deals for the benefit of the American people and indirectly waging a war with the Federal Reserve to lower rates and ideally make great reasons or have great reasons to win the narrative war on replacing Powell early. His Jerome Powell's position doesn't expire until next year, right? So the whole thing with dropping rates is a benefit to the country, but it also allows Scott Bessent to refinance $9 trillion in debt. That's a really big deal. Okay, lower rates help you and me on the front end of things. Lower furniture loans, lower car loans, lower credit card bills, lower home loan, everything that gets impacted by that short-term rate, right? But the other beneficiary is the US government being able to refinance a shitload of money and a shitload of debt. And you have the Federal Reserve sandbagging everybody, holding on to power and gloating about it. So if President Trump and Bessent can somewhat manipulate the situation and manipulate that perception into where we have a slowing economy and we have a growing workforce or growing unemployment. And I just lost my train of thought. That's bad. But where the economy slows a little bit, where the labor force softens a little bit, and inflation itself drops, then there's no reason for the Fed to keep rates high. The Fed has to cut rates, has to. So if Powell finally lowers rates, I say Powell individually, it's really the entire Federal Reserve, but it's really Jerome Powell at the forefront. So if Powell lowers rates, I think we'll see Bessent and Trump not directly assault that position in the sense that they're not going to hardly push for a new chair and figure out how to do that before his time runs out. If he does not lower rates, if he refuses to lower rates, then I think we'll see a greater push for a new Federal Reserve chair before Powell's time expires. So, all of that said, the table is set for drama. We've seen the tariff dip and the anticipated return. We've seen it being volatile and choppy, like what we expected. So, what happens now? Where, how, what do we invest in? The, the herd dropped equity or growth stocks, which I mean, just call it the herd dropped everything. I mean that pack of I would love to say that pack of jackals, but that gives them way too much credit. It's a herd of sheep. I mean where you and I would hear the bell and look for whatever sign is trying to come at us, the sheep run. They're either running to the bell or running away from the bell. Um, they panic. So the herd dumps everything, but primarily they dump consumer stocks and tech stocks, what you would like blue chip stocks. Um, and it's where they're headed now that has me maybe not perplexed. It makes me hesitate. So the herd drops all these mainly like consumer tech, blue chip, equity growth stocks. And we've been in bonds and bond proxies for a while. We missed the tariff dip in the Roth because of um, really the situation. We were transferring portfolios, and I'm still trying to figure out how to transfer the Roth out to a different from Webull to Fidelity without having to pay the transfer fee out of the Roth account. Um, we bought the tariff dip in the cash account, and we've done well with that. I mean, we're pretty much break even. I mean, we're kind of in the gray area in essence on buying. We could buy bonds and continue to look at bond proxies like we've done for, gosh, maybe 2 to 3 years at this point. And I think with Bessent and Trump's approach to target the 10-year with that system in place, bonds makes a lot of sense. Bond proxies still make a lot of sense, like utilities, energy transfer. I think real estate, that makes a ton of sense. Uh, but I'm almost at the point of considering switching the approach back to either blue chips or tech or just general. And I'm not a huge consumer. The consumer market itself, outright consumer products, uh, Del Monte and pick your ketchup brand and Oreo like Mondelez and Heinz and whoever else is out there. It it's a very volatile market. It's way too choppy for my taste. I much prefer um, closed-end funds that target tech or primarily operate in tech, industrial spaces, real estate. It just doesn't seem to be as choppy in that regard, as choppy as like an outright consumer market that's just incredibly cyclical and just continually up and down. But with the herd getting steered away from everything they just dropped, I mean, the herd's looking for assured income and they'll find that best in bonds. So with the herd slowly swinging its way into bonds, it's making me see a bigger picture in the sense of I think we're still fine looking at bonds and bond proxies, but as the herd continues to reorient its way into bonds, it's almost, and I don't know if we're quite there, but it's almost time to look into outright stocks, gross, and it's hard to hit. It's the terminology of things. It's not. It, when you're looking at consumer stocks, honestly, all of the stocks. We just say this: pick your consumer corporation, Heinz, Hershey, Mars, General Mills. Pick your company and all of its subsidiaries. Weber, automaker, like Weber grills, automaker, laptops, technology. They're all consumer products, right? A house is a consumer product. It's all cyclical to a degree. So how everybody likes to define the stock market, I don't think works anymore because it's just like technology. Everybody has technology. It's not just that Alphabet and Amazon and Nvidia and ASML and Apple and whoever else. Like, yes, we have those technology, you know, giants, those powerhouses of technology, but every company is technologically advanced and depends on technology. Housing is cyclical. I mean, in a large city, you could argue that it's not, and that part of the city's always empty. Part of it's always full. Part of it's always like it's never. I say it this way: it's never full in the sense that part of it is always up for sale or lease or rent to own or however you want to categorize that. In a smaller town, it's very cyclical. I mean, you still see turnover during the year, but you don't see any kind of turnover like the ends of semesters. Now, most people don't move during the winter, but a lot of people do, but most don't. Most people move during the summer. So from the months of say February maybe, but really March to August is a huge, I don't know, transitionary time in the housing market. So you have that giant shift, and you see the rest of the year go through the circle, and then you have the same cyclical process. But you're buying a house, you're buying a consumer product, you're buying a technology product. Yeah, I think my rant's over. But with the herd getting swung into bonds, and I don't know about bond proxy, but bonds and probably municipal bonds, maybe treasuries, we should be still looking at everything. And I don't know if it's that, I mean, we're not buying tomorrow. We bought early. We probably won't buy until, I don't know, first, second, third week of May, maybe even. But when that happens, I'll be looking at stock-based CEFs. I'll be looking at technology funds. I'll be looking at blue chip funds, and it's gonna force me to hyper focus on our strategy because you can't buy everything. I mean, you only have so much money, right? So you've got to prioritize strategy and still pick the best stuff in the current market for the long run. And that's why if the herd's swinging into bonds, I don't. we're ahead of the herd in the sense that we've already been in bonds. But if the herd's joining the party, then it's almost like I want to hang out in bonds and let them ratchet up the price. And then we'll either sell, right? Sell high, cycle the money through into something else, or we'll hang on to it and wait for the cycle to end and buy it low again. But as the herd swings into bonds and treasuries and bond proxies, maybe bond proxies or municipal bonds, we should look where the herd is not, right? We should look at all the stuff that they just left. They unloaded all of these shares. Everything's down, not as down as it was. All of these companies are less than what they were. We should look there and scoop the bargain while the herd is somewhere else. So my whole point is you have to connect the dots. You have to connect the dots, and you've got to see a bigger financial picture because those teleprompter jockeys, they don't care two shits about you and your retirement. Half of them just read the words and have zero idea what they mean, which also reflects on the same non-intellectuals we have in Congress. But the other half of that teleprompter crowd is actively leading the herd by the noose. It's not that they're leading them by a rope and a bell; they're leading them by the noose. So if I, I'll, I don't want to missay this. You've got to dig deeper. You've got to see that bigger picture, and you've got to have your own strategy. And if you can't right now, you'll get better at it. And whether you're amazing at it or not, I'm happy to continue helping you out to at least give you my 2 cents of things, but also see a bigger picture because the media itself deals in snapshots, and it's generally photoshopped or severely edited snapshots. You're not getting the truth or even the full picture of the truth. Remember, like if you looked at a computer screen, they would have it and then rotate it and tell you it was a full computer screen. So their picture is always faulty. So you've got to piece it together on your own. And if that's hard, and for on my end of things, it's fun. It's a lot of work, but it's fun. But I'm happy to continue helping you out. I like collecting info. I like acting as a hub for things. I love strategy, and I honestly I like making these videos and helping people out. So without further ado, let's get into the actual fund selection. So this is the closed-end fund list for this week, and it's considerably shorter than last week's. Last week went, I think, maybe 40, and I kept these three on the list. I mean, we own them, yes. They're dollar cost averages for us right now. They're municipal bonds. Um, they have tax equivalent dividends. You get paid for, I mean, it's like tax-free money. Um, and on the bonds end of things, it's if you're that worried about default and company closing and bonds, municipal bonds have the lowest of all default rates. It's crazy. Um, yeah. So for us this week, we're not buying this week. So if we were if we were buying in the Roth is a tax-free entity so long as we jump through the hoops. Buying municipal bonds doesn't make sense for that. Versus the cash account, that makes sense. Tax-free money is tax-free money. In either case, I think that the target system, the way it has been, would still apply. I'm not outright sold on jumping into the consumer side of the market because it is so volatile still. Um, I think we're still going to see some shakeups, and maybe I'm wrong on that, but I still think we see some shakeups. So, I mean, with us not buying this week, it doesn't so much matter in that regard. Um, but I'll leave at least one. Uh, let's see. I'll leave at least one option on the list. There might be two. We'll see how the sorting goes. Um, but otherwise, it's the gray area of investing in the sense of I think the best place overall to be is still bonds and bonds proxies. So you have bonds, senior loans, BDCs, that was my ice machine, utilities, energy transfer, and real estate. I think that's the best focus. That said, the herd is having its focus shifted and they're being steered into those things as well. The market overall has gone up since the dip, but it's not as high as it was prior to the dip. So you can still score a good deal. The flip side of that advice is with the herd leaving that other section, right? So the herd's leaving everything and headed into bonds and bonds proxies and municipal bonds and treasuries. So while the herd leaves all that other stuff, plus they just offloaded all this other stuff, we should give that other stuff a look. And if it makes sense for you to buy, then it makes sense for you to buy. Your portfolio is yours. Ours is ours. You've got to do the best thing for you. Of what we would target. Hmm. Well, we'll see how the sorting goes. So the priority will be the that bright green. Tech will make the list as this off-color green. Outright consumer is just not for me. Um, I mean, I can make a case for it, but I still think it's too volatile. So the blue chip company that didn't make the list is ADX because their current discount or their current discount to net asset value is not as low as the 1 year average or better. Um, and even though it's a quarterly paying company, that would make my consideration list, but it doesn't make the cut because it's fine tuning the strategy. If we're really going to try to optimize, we're really going to try to optimize our money. See, ADX, right? It is an exception, but we're looking at this, right? It's almost better to buy when the existing discount hovers around or exceeds or it's lower than the 52-week average. So at almost 9%, it's close to, but we'd get a better deal if it was at 11%. So it depends on if it depends on, I mean, 9% is close to 11%. So it's up to you. But yeah, but this week it didn't make my cut. So we still want to focus on monthly. And I don't really want to add something we don't already have unless it's better than what we already have, or it fills a void that we don't already have. So in the sense of, let's see, these three are great dollar cost averages for us, and it's free money. So I can see why that would be still on the list at the end. We'll see. DNP at utilities, right? When it is lower than when the discount is, well, so this is premium. So when it's 8% premium, when it's lower, right? Even though it's still premium, it's almost like a discount for this fund. So that's actually a decent deal compared to its actual 1 year average. Um, let's see, bonds, but we own the sister fund. OXLC, taxable senior loans and CLOs, collateralized loan obligations. They're excellent at the game. CGO is a ton of consumer, but it's got other stuff. River is bonds. We already have that. Hicks doesn't do better than the market or the benchmark. WDI is a mix of things, but we already have a lot of that stuff. ETV, all stock. So it's like you could, I like the ability to make more on your portfolio than what you already make on your portfolio. It allows them to pay a fatter dividend, but that might be harder in a lower inflation environment. We'll see. Um, and I don't know if I put, yeah, it's got it, it's honestly the more portfolio it can, where where whatever portfolio you're buying has everything. It's hard to dodge consumer products. It just is. Plus, even though it's technology based, it's still going to get labeled a consumer product. So I don't know. I think it's not this week, but it's interesting going forward. The Eaton Vance covered call or the buy right calls are interesting because they do generate more money than just what they're making off the individual funds. ETW, same idea. You can pause the video and read. ETB, same idea. Uh, and I'm going to pause. And I don't like wishy-washy stuff. If you've seen my videos, you know I hate wishy-washy snake oil stuff. So it's hard to advise when it's the gray space of advice. You can go bonds. I think bonds, bond proxies are still a great way to go. What's making me pause is knowing that the herd is getting steered into that same direction we've been going, and it's making me hesitate and question if we shouldn't go somewhere else. And I think that really it comes down to you and your strategy. For us, we're not buying tomorrow. So I can pick a list of 4 or 5 funds that are interesting and I can justify them. But it really comes down to you and what you want to do and where you see the market currently, where you see the market going in the future, comes down to your portfolio. Unless it fills a hole or unless it meets a need or is better than what we already have, it's really hard to add something to the portfolio that's already doing what we have inside the portfolio. So bonds, securities, same thing. I can get rid of municipal bond. I can get rid of municipal bond. I can get rid of. Maybe the municipal bond fits your needs. It doesn't fit ours because we already own those three. Uh, we already own a Cohen and Steers fund. There's two. There's this fund, Realty. There's another one, RQI. I could maybe advocate owning two if the portfolios were different. And I don't know because I didn't look at the portfolios before I made this video. If the portfolios were different, it's still all real estate. I mean, it's like you can own a gas station, right? You could own a corner lot where Shell builds a gas station and they're paying you rent, or you could own the Shell station where you're selling the gas. But it depends on what angle of who owns what property. Like if it's Shell or it, and I don't know, maybe the store owner owns the gas station. Maybe he bought a franchise. So the store owner owns the Shell store. The property owner owns the lot. The store owner pays the rent for the lot. For Cohen and Steers, it'd be like they own the corner lot, and whoever is renting the land from them. It looks like a gas station, but it's still a commercial real estate property. So if the portfolios were different, maybe you could justify two. If all three portfolios were different, it would still be Cohen and Steers all the way across, but it'd be three completely different portfolios. But it makes no sense to me to own two portfolios that do the same exact thing. Right. The only way I could look at that as a good idea is if one was in, like, currently RLTY has a 5.5% discount. Uh, we own RFI, which did not make the list for the week. So if RFI didn't make the list based on the standard and RLTY did, and they had the same portfolio and you were dead set on buying real estate, I could understand why you wanted the discount on RLTY. But it doesn't really do anything because it's the same thing of what you already have. It just happens to be on discount. And it actually is, I mean, it's pushing 14 and a half, $15. You're paying a pretty penny for it. Do you really need to buy it if it's the same thing of what you already have? So for us, no. Bond companies, so let's see. So municipal bonds, loans, and CLOs. So we have on one end of the pendulum, we have small corporation, 50 to 60 million in assets, almost 100% US investment. And what I've said about FCO the whole time, that it's an all American company, same general setup, except that they're a private lender and a BDC, which is a huge push on Scott Besant's end of things as a small business guy. Both funds are great. CIF has been cyclical and like a roller coaster ride in the sense that it does this. FCO used to be a private fund, and when it opened, you had the overall value, you had the discount, and it's been doing this until recently. The tariff dropped it, right? The whole tariff thing, and now it's climbing back up. CIF, I bought it knowing we would ride the roller coaster, and we bought it inside the Roth. When the roller coaster goes back up, we sell it and we push the money somewhere else. I have not bought it inside the cash account, uh, honestly, because when I the more roller coasters I ride, it's not something you want to do in every portfolio. It's not something you want to do a lot. And riding the roller coaster, is, as fun as it sounds, isn't that fun. So we're sitting on this one. We're not going to add more to it. FCO would stay. In bonds, we already have. I like these two companies. Similar in the sense that they're both bond companies, but BRW has changed significantly. Bonds, stocks, closed-end funds, raw material, um, precious metals. Like it's got a little of everything. Saba, it used to be mostly government bonds, but now it's a mix of things. Um, NBXG is all stock and it's tech heavy, super tech heavy. And I would keep it on the list. Maggie is another utility company. ERH, I'm not a huge Allspring fan. I've honestly considered taking it off the track list, but I track it because of the discount. Like I want to be honest and straightforward in the sense of what I'm tracking. I'm tracking it because it is a significant discount. But the same sense, I do not like the irregular dividend, and I'm not a huge Allspring fan. Kane Anderson is a significant discount. It's close. 14.08 is pretty much 14.13. But for us, it's about $3 higher. So I wouldn't buy it because it's $3 higher than our current dollar cost average. TEEF, I keep on the list too. But and I've said it before, it's really hard for me to get behind their belief statement when everything they do depends upon oil. They hate oil, but everything they do depends upon oil. HGLB, I've talked, I mean, it's turned into more of a portfolio when it can. I loved it when it was bonds, real estate, utilities, energy. When it was that stuff, I was on board. Since they've added to it, I'm less on board. It still does well, but I'm not sold on keeping it long term. I would like to see a company statement and what they're up to. HFRO, I still think there is light at the end of the tunnel and it's not a train. I still think the more square footage they get online, just will continue to add value to the company. I would like a better explanation from the company of why they went from all out bonds to all out real estate and the transition of that. And the transition has sucked. And the transition has been made worse because the company just won't outright say we did it because of this. But I still think there's hope for this company. So I get there's still a lot on the list. We need to take some out. So Saba and BRW are the same. Slightly different portfolios, but I like BRW better. Eaton Vance, I think, is a great idea in the future, but we're not quite there yet. Same with Calamos. So that leaves us with stuff we already own. So if I could whittle it down, like if I really wanted to hyper focus on what I would invest this week, if you forced me to make a pick, what would we buy? If you forced me to do it, uh-oh, drama in the background. It's hard to ditch the greatest discount. So if tax-free money was a thing, taxable equivalent dividend or tax equivalent dividend. There we go. If tax-free money was a thing to you, I would say these three would make my list. If that doesn't matter, then it would just be that group and all. It's the same notes I've displayed, but all whiten it out. You can pause the video and then look at it. So I paused long enough. You can pause the video. Great. Technology, simply because the herd has dropped a lot of this and they are pushing into other stuff. This company I like because it's an advocate for shareholders. FCO for what I've already said, XLC for what I've already said. So if tax-free money were important to you, I would say those three. Inside our like if we were buying inside the Roth, I would pick these five. If it really came down to if you really forced me to make an opinion, like if you was like, look, pick two funds and that was it. OXLC would be close, but if you forced me to pick two funds, I would say fine, but I'm still picking a third, and I would go with that batch. I think that sets us up the best in the current market of things. But I'll hedge it. And I hate wishy-washy stuff. I do. I hate when people do it to me. In complete transparency, we're not buying tomorrow. We're not buying this week, not unless something crazy happens. If the herd has another panic moment and freaks out, I will reconsider buying for the week. But as of right now, we're not buying for the week. And I think we're at and it's not like a solid day. Like it might span a couple weeks or hopefully it doesn't span a couple months because we really need the Fed to cut rates and we really need someone to force the Fed to cut rates. And cutting rates over the summer would be amazing. I mean, the school year ends in about a month. Cutting rates before the summer would be huge. It would help a ton of people, but I mean, the Fed's a bunch of assholes, so probably not. Um, yeah. So if you were going to hold my feet to the fire and say, pick something, I would pick this. But in complete transparency, we're not buying tomorrow, and we're not buying this week. It'll. I have to look back and see what we bought the last time. My goal has been to um, section off our former Morgan Stanley account and buy in scheduled, in a sense, batches, but also focused batches. I just don't want to buy willy nilly. I definitively don't want to put it all into the market at once. Um, So I don't know if that means the first week of May, second week, third week, or even just the first week of June. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But whenever we buy, we'll still be looking in the bond category, pending how things change in the economy. We'll still be looking at the bond category of things, but we'll also be swinging and looking into where the herd is leaving because with the volatility we're seeing, with the herd continuing to dump those types of stocks, I think we can score an amazing deal given the right opportunity in that sector. And then that plays to the overall long game plan of things because so the herd will get steered into bonds. Eventually, at some point, the Fed will cut rates. They'll be like, oh my gosh, we can spend all this money again. And whether that's true or not, that gives the perception that you can spend more and invest more. And people will come back and then buy into those same stocks we bought cheap. And now we have those stocks take off too. So we have rising prices in growth and equity and technology and all of that stuff. And then we have whatever happens in the bond market. And then whether you choose to sell it and buy it low, sell it high, and roll the money forward, like wait for it to hit 20% profit, sell it, don't think anything of it, roll the money forward. Or if you want to buy and hold it, wait for it to cycle back down, buy it low, dollar cost average in your favor, then I can see that strategy too. So for now, those are my three for the week, but also we're not buying this week. I think I've said that enough to be transparent enough. So if you like my content, if it's helpful, then consider subscribing to my channel and help me hack YouTube by leaving me a comment, sharing the video, and clicking the like button. And if you want to find me day to day, same thing. Leave a comment, or you can come track me down on Facebook in the Navigate Your Finances group on Facebook. But otherwise, man, on my end of things, there is a month left of school. We have a lot going on financially. Um, Lots of big things financially for us. And I'll still continue everything. I'll still continue all the research for the stock market, the closed-end fund updates, and these videos. But with a month left of school, gosh, I hope things will get a little easier week to week. We'll see. We're not quite out of the woods yet. So whatever you have for the week, I hope it goes well. But whatever you're up to, I hope you're seeing progress in your process um, on on my reminders of things. It's very easy to compare what you're doing to somebody else, but y'all are on very different journeys, right? It looks similar on the surface, but you're on very different journeys. So I get that it's natural to compare yourself to somebody else, but it's and you don't want to get trapped into the self comparison stuff either, like the image you think you should be versus the person you are. It's, are you making progress in your individual journey? Are you doing the things day to day that will help you get to where you want to be? Because that end goal, wherever your vision takes you, right? Like look on one side of the map to the other, right? Really, your vision exists beyond the border of the map, beyond the horizon, right? So wherever your vision takes you, you don't automatically get there tomorrow. It's little stuff along the way that gets to what gets you to where you need to be. So stop comparing your journey to somebody else's. Start doing the stuff that you need to do every day, or keep doing the stuff you need to do every day. Be willing to learn, be willing to fail, have an idea where you're going, know what that means overall. Now, on our end of things, we have a lot going on. I'll continue to update as stuff happens. Um, yeah, it's the end of the school year, and then it's just the ongoing possibility of all this other stuff. So whatever you have that happens this week, it's the end of a month this week, right? The beginning of a new month this week. Whatever you have going on this week, I hope it goes well. And if you're stuck, and that's in anything, finance, life, business endeavor, whatever. If you feel stuck and you want to chat with somebody, either comment on a video or come find me on Facebook and let's chat. I mean, even if it just helps you to talk to somebody about what you're dealing with, or what you're up against, or uh, anything for that matter. If you want to chat with somebody who can give you a different perspective, then give me a shout. But whatever you have this week, I hope it goes well and I hope you make progress. So this is Daniel Young signing off. I will see y'all on another video. Bye bye.